of transition, I extend a warm welcome to all the expert panelists. I also would like to welcome all the participants who have joined us for the webinar on an important subject. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Nitesh Gupta, who will be moderating the webinar. As you may be aware, friends, Transition is at the forefront for providing online training programs for insolvency professionals and IP aspirants. Transition's masterclasses for IPs and SpeedLearn certificate courses are extremely popular with the insolvency professionals. We believe in qualitative programs to enrich the participants. Transition is also an ACE publisher with many publications, out of which analysis of cases for limited insolvency examination by Mr. Ashish Makhija has become the bestseller. Before I introduce our expert panelists for today, let me inform you all some rules that have to be followed by us during this webinar. During the webinar, please keep your microphones muted to have a better experience. Participants are requested to ask their questions through the chat box. It is recommended that the participants attend the webinar from a quiet environment. It is also advised that the participants may use headphones or earphones for the webinar for better audibility. It is advisable to close all other applications while attending the webinar. In case anyone gets disconnected in between, they can click on the link and join again. I will now like to introduce our first panelist, Mr. Ravi Prakash Ganti. Mr. Ganti is the founder director of Resolve International Private Limited and also an insolvency professional. He possesses a wide and intensive experience of more than 35 years across various industry sectors, namely consumer durables, industrial components, seafood, and chemicals. Mr. Ganti is currently a liquidator of 9 corporate debtors in real estate sector and an advisor to the liquidator and resolution professional in 3 separate matters. On an academic front, Mr. Ganti has a BTech honors in metallurgical engineering from IIT Kharagpur in 1979, a PGDBM from XLRI, Jamshedpur in 1981, with specialization in marketing and finance, and he's also a second year student of LLB. In addition to his rich experience, Mr. Ganti is a regular faculty in IBBI's pre-registration course for insolvency professionals. Our next expert panelist is Mr. Ashish Makhija. Mr. Makhija bears top credentials in subject of insolvency and bankruptcy law and corporate law amongst others. He has served as the standing counsel for the official liquidator attached to the High Court of Delhi. He is also an insolvency professional. He is the best faculty for limited insolvency examination, and people from all across India have attended his seminars, which has helped them immensely. He is a leading practitioner in the field of insolvency, corporate laws, and commercial litigation. He is a World Bank trained corporate trainer. He is an adjunct faculty for Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs under Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India. He has also served as the adjunct professor at Thomas Jefferson School of Law, San Diego, California, USA in 2013 to 14. He has spoken extensively on the subject of insolvency, bankruptcy, and corporate law. He has authored 14 books on the subject of insolvency law and corporate law as well. He has also authored IBC Case Digest, which is published by Bloomsbury, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of India, which is published by LexisNexis, which is a comprehensive section-wise commentary on IBC amongst others. He has significant corporate board experience and has served as an independent director in Shipping Corporation of India Limited, Caterpillar India Limited, and other public and private limited companies. I'll also like my time to introduce our moderator, Mr. Nitesh Gupta. CA Nitesh Gupta is a practicing chartered accountant and an insolvency professional. He had been effectively discharging his duties as an avid professional by providing specialized consultancy in the areas of project financing, subsidies, project setup, etc. He had been the managing committee member of Agra branch of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India from the year 2007 to 13, serving the branch in various capacities as a treasurer, secretary, vice chair. He had served the Agra branch as its chairman in year 2011 to 2012, and under his able leadership, the Agra branch had won the prestigious Star Branch Award in the Central Region. Apart from his positions at ICAI, CA Nitesh Gupta has also nominated on Zonal Advisory Board of LIC of India, North Central Zone, for the period 2018 to 2020. He's a regular faculty at various forums, including the ICI, ICSI, LIC of India, MSME Agra, etc. For further proceedings, I'll request Mr. Nitesh Gupta to kindly take over.
Prakhar, I'll just interrupt in between. I think Mr. Subodh Agarwal has also joined. Maybe you can also introduce him.
Sure, sir, I'll do. Our final panelist for today is Mr. Subodh Kumar Agarwal. He's a practicing chartered accountant and insolvency professional from Kolkata. He possesses more than 30 years of experience in conducting various audits, SEBI matters, corporate law matters, financial services, and insolvency. Mr. Agarwal has served as the chairman of Eastern Regional Council of ICAI in 2006 and also has been the president of ICAI for the year 2013. He has served on various national committees. On an international front, he has acted as the president of South Asian Federation of Accountants and apex body of SARC, as a board member of Confederation of Asian and Pacific Accountants, and has also been a member of Small and Medium Practitioners Committee of International Federation of Accountants, New York. He is the chairman of Advisory Committee of Indian Institute of Insolvency Professionals of ICAI and is also associated with Chamber of Commerce. On the academic front, he got 10th All India rank in CA final exam held by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He has also delivered lectures in various seminars, symposia, and conferences organized by EIRC, ICAI, and various study circles and other organizations on Ind AS, insolvency, etc. I'll now kindly request Mr. Nitesh Gupta to please take over the proceedings.
Nitesh, you are muted.
Yes. Yeah, now I am okay, sir. So, a very good evening and thanks to Prakharji for giving such a wonderful introduction of every of the panelists for that matter. So, very good evening to the vibrant panelists what we are having today. While just going through the introduction, we had an opportunity to listen the introduction of Ashish sir, our past president, Subodh sir, and Ganti sir. To you, I am talking for the first time. But regarding Ashish sir and Subodh sir, I can just tell about both of them that if I am a resolution professional, so there is a lot of contribution of both these gentlemen. Because Ashish sir was here at Agra and 2 days he was teaching somewhere around a batch of 30 of us. So, and sir, just to share with you that till now, I think 7 of us has passed that exam. So with all your guidance, we have been doing good, and it was all your motivation that we have moved forward in this arena of insolvency professionals. And second, my sincere gratitude to Subodh sir also, that whenever I just needed his guidance, so he was always there to guide me before appearing the exams. Also, I just had a word with Subodh sir. So with this great visionary, I would rather say a very experienced panel. So we are very sure that today's program, we are going to have a very good program. And my sincere gratitude to Team Transition also for giving me this opportunity to moderate this program. And what already has been informed, the rules of the game have already been set by Mr. Prakhar from the team of Transition, that the questions will be raised through chat box only. So that will be a smooth sailing for all of us. So I think with this, we can start our discussion, and the flow will be like this. I would just like to share the flow with all the participants. That flow of the program will be that first Ashish Makhija sir, he will be just deliberating on this discussion paper. He will be just introducing to each of the participant about this discussion paper. And then after his completing the discussion paper, I will be raising the questions to all the three panelists. All the three panelists can, I will be just raising the questions one by one, and the panelists can put their response, and whosoever the participant intends to raise their question. So my humble submission will be that they can raise their question through chat box. And one more humble submission I would like to put to every participant, that today we are having an opportunity to listen these three gentlemen whom we listened in their introduction, that I don't think that one-to-one it will be easy to get any one of their time. And right now they are available live. All of them three are available live with us. So as many questions can be raised to them. So it will be a great opportunity for all of us. So just I would request all of you that we can have a great session ahead with all of these three panelists we have with us. So by taking, although I have introduced, I have informed everything about the program. So just Ashish sir, before going to you, I will just start the program by taking the blessings of Lord Ganpati ji and knowledge, goddess of knowledge, Ma Saraswati. So with this, I request you that initially you can take your time to introduce what this discussion paper is all about, for which we have to put in our final comments up to 16th of September 2020. So, sir, I request you to please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Nitesh ji, and welcome to all the participants. And in fact, I'm delighted to be a part of this discussion, which obviously have Mr. Ganti and also Mr. Subodh Agarwal as expert panelists. But what is the document which has been issued, which is a discussion paper issued by IBBI? I think to first of all, let us understand what it contains. Only then we can have our views and opinions. This document, my dear friends, has been issued by IBBI on 26th of August 2020. It is called as discussion paper on corporate liquidation, and it contains very two important aspects which we need to discuss. One is assignment of not readily available assets, realizable assets, which is called as NRRA. So that means that asset which is not readily realizable. Now, what should be done? Can it be assigned, and in what conditions it could be assigned? And second is assignment of claims and interests. So if a company is in liquidation, if it's not able to sell its assets, what it should be done, whether the liquidation can continue for a longer time or not. So therefore, IBBI wants certain opinion, and they are actually trying to bring in two regulations, amending the liquidation regulation. So let's try to understand that first. I will not be giving my comments at this stage. I will just be presenting what is there in the paper so that everyone is on a level playing field. So friends, this is the discussion paper which I was talking about. And this has been issued particularly by IBBI on 26th of August 2020, inviting comments from all the IPs and from other circles. Two aspects which are being covered are A, assignment of not readily realizable assets. In short, we can call them as NRRA, which has been also mentioned like this. And second is assignment of claims and interests. Now, let us also try to understand what is the meaning of NRRA. If we go by the language which has been used in the discussion paper, I'm only confining to that only. It says statutory refunds. Like if a company goes into liquidation, it may have income tax refund which is due, or GST refund which is due, which is likely to come. But when it is going to come, we don't know. So there could be certain contingent receivables could also be there, which is depending upon happening of some event or not happening. So those kind of conditions could also, receivables could also be there. Then there could be some disputed receivables, like some arbitration proceedings, or not sub judice, because sub judice is a separate class which has been treated here. Disputed receivables be there where there is a contested position. That means some suit is going on. And then there could be sub judice in the sense that there is a pending arbitration or pending suit proceedings which are going on. Then there could be a disputed ownership also in a particular asset. Like supposing the company which is under liquidation has got certain asset or land on which, say, squatters are sitting. Now, you see, there could be a dispute on the ownership, you see, also of the corporate debtor. Well, these disputes, my dear friends, generally take a very, very long time. They cannot be sorted out in a shorter period of time, which the IBBI wants that liquidation process should be completed in 1 year. So sometimes it is not possible. Then we could also categorize avoidance transaction recoveries, because if you have filed an applications from 43 to 51 or section 66 application where the recoveries are expected, well, if their recoveries under these sections are not easily decidable, they cannot be decided in a hurry. And we have seen that NCLTs are taking a very long time because it depends upon the evidence which you are presenting. It's a long drawn process. Then warranty claims, project overrun claims, infringement claims, or tort claims could also be there. So these could be categorized as not readily realizable assets, which are with the corporate debtor. In NRRA, the main common factor is that there is uncertainty in recovery. Well, as to the time and as to the amount, both of them, you see, are uncertain in that particular aspect. Well, Regulation 44, I think each one of us is aware that liquidation is a time-bound process. IBBI says it must be ideally completed in 1 year. Of course, this period can be extended with the prior approval of the adjudicating authority, but definitely we can't wait for an indefinite time to close liquidation. This is why the IBC came that the liquidation process should be as early as possible. In the era prior to IBC in Companies Act, well, we have seen cases of liquidation were closing, say, sometimes you see they were taking 10 years, in some cases 20 years, and in many cases In fact, I was the standing counsel for the official liquidator in Delhi High Court. One company we were able to close after 40 years. So 1971 winding up order was passed. In 2011, the dissolution application was moved. So it used to take a lot of time. That is why IBC came in. Then what are the options for the liquidation? Now, this is one of the things which are already there in the liquidation. Number one, Regulation 38 says that if the property is not able, asset is not readily saleable or realizable, well, that can be distributed in kind to the stakeholders. But this can be done with the permission of adjudicating authority. So this is one option which is available. The second also, which is actually not mentioned in the discussion paper, they have already only mentioned about Regulation 38, but I think we can't miss Regulation 10 also, which says disclaimer of onerous property. So onerous property can also be disclaimed, and onerous here also includes not readily realizable, that not easily realizable. So that is also one of the aspects which we need to consider. Why the process of NRRA is to be introduced, or assignment of NRRA is to be introduced, is because IBBI also believes, and we all understand, that there are limited funds in liquidation estate because the company has gone into liquidation. Funds are very, very limited. Well, if you keep on with the litigation for, say, next 10 years to settle the dispute between the parties on the title or other things, well, litigation cost can be seriously high, and it is seriously high. And what is the result? End result? There is a delay, cost of recovery is high, and there is uncertainty in closure. So these three aspects need to be taken care with the proposed assignment of NRRA. That is what this is there. Now, what are the options which have been mentioned in the discussion paper? One is absolute assignment of the NRRA. That means it is assigned to somebody else, a third party, and he or she takes all the risks along with that. And whatever recoveries are made, then he or she is the beneficiary. Of course, he is paying a certain amount to the liquidator. This is quite similar to where the banks are also, you can say, that selling their bad loans to the asset reconstruction company. So this could be in a similar environment, that those assignments, what we are talking about. Second is that it could be a conditional assignment. Conditional assignment is that some amount is received by the liquidator, and then once the process of recovery is taken up by the third party, then whatever is recovered, then that is also shared between the liquidator and by the person who has been assigned. Well, so these we can call it as assignment of NRRA with recompense. That means it is a recompensation which is given back to the liquidator. But again, there could be certain uncertainty in this case. How long it's going to take, we don't know. So therefore, this is also one of the options which has been discussed. Absolute assignment, as I mentioned, it will be assigned at a certain value. Assignee gets the absolute rights, and liquidator gets immediate money for distribution to the stakeholder. So this is one of the options which are being considered by the IBBI, that we should give freedom to the liquidators to do this. Conditional is, of course, some initial price is received, then net recovery realization minus the cost of recovery, then it is shared between both assigner and assignee. Well, it is not clear what will happen to the loss. Well, it may depend upon the agreement. We're going to discuss on this. And IBBI paper says that we must adopt a liquidator must adopt a cautious approach in this. And the only thing which we also to consider is that will this approach save time or not, as compared to the absolute assignment. One of the other aspect is 29A. 29A is talks about that who are eligible to submit the resolution plans. Well, can the NRRA be assigned to a person who is eligible or not eligible under 29A? This is a big question. IBBI says it should be assigned only to the people who are eligible under section 29A. They are taking cue from section 35(1)(f), which also talks about, it says sale of assets is not to be done in liquidation to persons who are not eligible under 29A. And if we look at regulation 2B and section 52, they are also talking in the same breath that the persons who are ineligible, they are not allowed to submit a scheme of compromise or arrangement, and secured creditors are also not allowed to sell it to the ineligible persons under section 29. And so same kind of thought process is being brought in by IBBI. Well, in liquidation, there is no COC. We are all aware. So there is a stakeholders consultation committee. Now, the process, IBBI wants it that this assignment of NRRA must be deliberated with the SEC. That means the stakeholders committee must consider this. What are the assets which are being considered as NRRA? Whether the case exists for assignment or not, action of recovery and what is the possibility of recovery, whether the settlement is also feasible with the party, or what is in the best interest of CD and what are the alternatives available. So based on this, just like a commercial wisdom of the COC, similar to that, in that nature, the SEC will also look into this aspect. The only difference is, of course, it will be a 66% voting required, present and voting, but then in the same breath, they say that even if that resolution which is passed, will not be binding on the liquidator. And we have all seen that the stakeholders consultative committees, whatever recommendations are there, they are not binding on the liquidator. But if liquidator differs with them, obviously he has to have certain grounds or the reasons why he agrees or disagrees with the decision of SEC. So what are the proposed amendments, my dear friends? Now, proposed amendment is that liquidator has to explore possibility of assignment of NRRA through public option or arm's length basis. We are going to discuss about this. And then it can be an absolute assignment or conditional assignment. That means assignment with recompense. Of course, it is subject to 29A and consult SEC. And if he disagrees, then record reason. So this is what the proposed amendment talks about. 38A is the amendment, which is the regulation which needs to be inserted in the liquidation regulation. So that also talks about the same thing. And then this is 38A, which I'm reproducing. I'm not reading it right now because we are in any case going to discuss. Let me go to the second aspect, friends, which is mentioned in the discussion paper. It is assignment of claims or interest. Now, assignment of debt is provided in CIRP, as we have seen, right? If we look at the definition of financial creditor, operational creditor, so there we find that the assignment of debt is mentioned there. In fact, in Regulation 28 also, that is mentioned there. And if we look at NCLAT judgments like Fortune Pharma or Synergies Dure Automotive, which was the first case which was resolved under IBC, there was an issue relating to the assignment of debts. Well, that has been recognized. And I think we don't require NCLAT judgments for this. We have been seeing over a period of time that assignment is a contract which has been recognized by Honorable Supreme Court of India for all these years. But similar provision of assignment of debt was missing in liquidation. Well, can a liquidator also assign a debt? Or during liquidation, not liquidator, during liquidation, supposing a claimant is there. Now he or she assigns his claim to somebody else. Will that assignment agreement be recognized by liquidator or not? Well, the answer is yes, it should be done. That is what the IBBI is proposing, that assignment deed to be provided to liquidator, and liquidator will, once it considers that, it will change the name of the claimant, and then it will apply to the adjudicating authority for modifying the list of the stakeholders. Because the list of the stakeholders he has already submitted in the initial stages. If there is a change or assignment, he has to go back to the adjudicating authority for modification. So assignment deed will be provided and that will be recognized. So this assignment deed is between two parties separately outside the liquidation. Then the liquidator is brought into the picture in that particular aspect. And the new regulation 30A is proposed to be added here, transfer of debt due to creditors. And it clearly says that if a creditor assigns the debt to any other person during the liquidation process, both the parties are supposed to provide the terms of such assignment to and the identity of assignee or the transferee. And then liquidator will apply to the adjudicating authority to modify the entry in the stakeholders list. So this is a simpler one, I would say. This is a simpler process, but the first one is definitely needs more discussion. So these are the questions which IBBI has also framed in their discussion paper. Well, at this stage, I will hand it over back to Nitesh ji, who is the moderator, so he can continue from here onwards. Over to you, Nitesh.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving insight of this entire discussion paper. So I think I can just start raising the questions, and just for your kind information that right now we are somewhere around 200 participants as of now. So it's a good number, I would say. And the questions which already you are sharing your screen, so I can this is the para 49 of the discussion paper. So, sir, before going to these questions, I think I am having a question in chat box. So, I think I should raise first that question, and this question is to you, Ashish sir. So, this question is like this question has been raised by Ashish Shastri ji. So, he's saying, in line with auction, can private sale also be conducted with 75% drop reduction in the reserve price after failure of auctions in accordance with Schedule 1 of liquidation regulations?
Well, I think, you see, we'll when we take up all these questions, I think those questions will be taken up along with this only. So I think let's park this question, and whenever you are dealing with other questions, because we don't want to jump to a certain process. So let's first discuss all these questions. I think then we can take up all these questions. This is a good question. Definitely it needs an answer. Nitesh ji, can you hear me?
Sir, I think Mr. Nitesh's screen is frozen.
Okay. So anyhow, then Prakhar, maybe you can take over and you can start.
Sure, sir. So if the questions are to be answered in the end, I'll request Mr. Ganti sir to kindly take over the proceedings.
No, the point is, okay, anyhow, well, Nitesh, till the time Nitesh comes, well, the first question is, should it be possible for the liquidator to sell or assign NRRA to any third party as an alternative to liquidator pursuing such claims himself? So what IBBI wants it that, number one, should it be done or not? That is first of the questions. Of course, if it is to be done, then in what format it should be done? So I think we should have the opening comments from Mr. Ganti, so as to whether this is a good idea or is it not a good idea.
Thank you, Ashish ji. Yeah, I think it is an excellent idea, long overdue. Every liquidation, whether it was winding up under Companies Act or even under IBC, I think every liquidator has faced this problem. What to do with those assets which are NRRA category? And what is worse than having no assets for liquidation is having those assets which can't be sold. I think it's probably even more. I mean, wholeheartedly support this. I would also like to share that in one particular assignment where I was consulting with the liquidator, this has happened about 8-9 months ago. We actually started this process with the approval of the SEC as formed. We have not had any success as such in terms of getting an interest, but that was the case of an actionable. Take maybe 5 to 7 years to come to fruition. So this was something which the stakeholders committee wholeheartedly agreed, yes, we should explore such an option and see if it can work out. So yes, my answer is yes, absolutely. It's an idea whose time has come.
Okay, so what is, number one is you're wholeheartedly supporting this idea. And number two, you're also saying that even before this discussion paper came along, you had already kind of explored this kind of an option along with the help of these stakeholders committees. I mean, they had also approved it, this
Yes.
process.
Yes.
I think that's pretty good. I think you have been ahead of time, I would say that. Okay. Yes, I think now we can also have the opening remarks of Mr. Subodh Agarwal, who is the past president of our institute, and he is doing very well as an insolvency professional. So welcome, Mr. Subodh, and I think we can hand over, to you for your opening comments on this particular aspect. Only thing is
you are on mute.
Yeah, you will have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Now.
First of all, my apology. I am sitting on a public place. In fact, some sudden work came, and then since I was somewhere else, I had no choice. Since I had committed, so I'm in a park in Hyderabad. So you have to bear with me if there is a public loud noise, etc. Children are playing here. So you have to bear with me. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, okay, sir. Your level of commitment is highly appreciated, sir. Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
To be very upright, I'm sitting outside the police thana. That just beside the police thana. But then I told that please wait, I will come back. So now coming back on the topic which has come, in fact, it was bothering me as a resolution professional. So far, I have not accepted any assignment of liquidation. Whatever came to me, I did not accept and simply rejected. But then the thing was bothering was those assets which I knew will be very difficult to realize. So the first point, NRRA. And if I look at the industry, big industry, I'll capture the first point is debtors. That is the receivables from the corporate. I will not say those are genuine or ingenuine, but if there is a debtors of 100 crore, and you will find that out of the 100 crore, maybe 50 crore, the address are not there, or the email will return back. Rest of the 50 crore, they will dispute that no, my account has been settled. I had sent a letter for debit note and credit note, and the corporate debtor did not account for. So what will happen to those? What Makhija ji raised about the contingent, which is contingent upon time. So there we can't comment anything because nobody knows what will be the outcome. But those assets which we feel are receivable, but when you go practically, it is not receivable. In fact, one case came to my knowledge in Kolkata NCLT, where more than 4,000 crore of debtors were there, and that company went into liquidation. What happened to those 4,000 crore? And I can assure you that if company goes in, at least out of the 100 company, mainly in 70 or 80 companies, this kind of asset will be there. So what will be the value? The valuer value those assets maybe 5%, and sometimes they take a stand. If it is more than 1 year old, the valuation is nil. The valuation is nil. So practical purpose, for my book purpose, the valuation is nil. But then can I approach the NCLT, since the valuation is nil, this NRRA has no value. Probably after this regulation comes into picture, the executing authority will not allow. So those are the concern area. But then my second concern is the market has to be developed. Right now there is no market. But once these provisions, these regulations come into picture or notified, definitely we will find that slowly and gradually the market will develop. And once the market will develop, then some kind of mechanism will be there that it can be sold out to someone. Yeah, what sometimes I wonder and have fun with my friends that in case of a corporate debtor, though Makhija ji said that 29 is there, even the secured creditor, when he does not relinquish the asset, he can't sell because there is a judgment of SBI versus Anuj Vajpayee, that it cannot be sold. But then by way of other mode, they would like to take back this asset, 100 crore asset at maybe 50 lakh or 25,000. But I totally concur. The mechanism is required. The provisions are required so that with time, maybe in 6 months, 1 year or 2 years, once it is provided, the provisions are made, there will be free and fair market on this and it can be addressed. Over.
Okay. So what you are saying is that definitely there is a need for this kind of a thing. And in fact, I also support wholeheartedly because this kind of situation is required, because if you want to expedite, my experience as a, standing counsel for the official liquidator, well, I can tell you that recoveries have been very, very difficult. And it was taking such a huge long time. In fact, one of the things which I was mentioning, that it took 40 years. After 40 is in 2011. Well, when I moved the application for dissolution, the honorable judge looked at me and said, "Congratulations, Mr. Makhija." I said, "Thank you, my lords." He said, "Yes, after 40 years, at least you were able to file the dissolution application." So it took almost 40 years to do that. Well, we need to resolve this kind of a situation. I think Nitesh has come back. So Nitesh,
Yes,
we
sir.
have discussed question number A, where
Yeah.
I think all the participants are agreeing, expert panelists are agreeing that it should be there. Now, I think we can move on to the second question now. Maybe
Yes, sir,
you can
sure.
take over from here.
Sure. Yes, sir. So, sorry for the interruption, which was there, something technical went wrong. So, sir, raising the second question to Ganti, sir, I would like to have this question. So, this question is like, sir, should the assignment have an option of recompense facility? If yes, what should be the mechanism to distribute funds to stakeholder post dissolution of the corporate debtor?
Yeah. See, whether it should be an absolute assignment or one with recompense would largely depend on the particular circumstances of each case. Makeja had pointed out time and amount. I mean, how long it will take and how much are you likely to realize. Where the uncertainty is largely on time, but not on amount, then probably it will be without recompense, because then you can crystallize. Both sides know it's just a question of time, but more or less this is what we will get. So the deal can be struck. But where the amount itself is uncertain, and time, of course, is usually, it's possible that both sides will decide what is best. Now, who is getting the benefit of it? Ultimately, the creditors. So most of them would be part of the stakeholder consultation committee. Largely, it will be secured creditors. Unsecured would usually not get anything in most circumstances. Now, it's up to them to take the call. I mean, I have always held the opinion that if the money belongs ultimately to the creditors, they should have the should be done. Unfortunately, many of them don't want to do anything about it. That's a separate issue. Okay. So I would say it should be left to the mechanism where the SEC and the liquidator together decide what shall be the method, whether it should be absolute assignment or the one with recompense on each case-to-case basis. I don't think any prescription can be advised by anybody or any individual as to what will happen tomorrow. And how to distribute the funds, second question. Okay, this is a bit tricky because who is going to be there to distribute it? If the case takes 3 years, will the liquidator still be there? And in another roundtable we were discussing, we are all mortals. We don't know who will be there tomorrow. So it has to be institutionalized. And which institution? Okay, there are two options. One, judiciary itself. That's a permanent institution. That means once these things are there, then like many other cases where the judiciary gets the money and distributes it, the formula is set in the order itself when you are doing such a thing. That is one. That is the NCLT. Or it could be the board or MCA, whatever is deemed fit. But it has to be an institution which is of a permanent nature. It cannot be the liquidator. Thank you.
Yeah. So, sir, I think what you have said, a trade-off type of situation we will have to work out. We will have to find out a trade-off that which position is better. So, this recompense or without recompense, this trade-off has to be worked out.
It's a commercial at the end of it, factoring in uncertainty.
True, sir. True. So, Ashish sir, would you like to add something to this? Because recompense is again a new word in, it's not very much used in common parlance. So, if you can just specifically, if you can just comment upon this word also, and if you would like to add something to this.
Okay, I will actually, Nitesh, I'll go by, you see, by the legal aspects also.
Yes, sir.
Well, one is, of course, there's a commercial call. There is no quarrel about this aspect. The liquidator is the person who is responsible primarily, because even if he is consulting the stakeholders consultation committee, those consultations are not binding on him or her. Supposing the SEC wants to say pass a resolution assigning, say, at 10% value, I mean 90% kind of a haircut. Well, liquidator should take its call. If he feels that it is not, he is able to sell it better price than 10%, well, that will be again his call. But then I am only worried about, you see, the disciplinary proceedings to liquidators. I'm telling you honestly, because sometimes supposing you assign, say, at 20% and 80%, and tomorrow somebody comes and if it is sold to an, you see, assignee, and assignee actually is able to recover, say, 50% later on, well, then who is going to, you see, face that music? because we are seeing that even after the CRP processes, the IPs are also being raided. Well, my dear friends, be very careful. And as Mr. Ganti has said, it is definitely a commercial call, but please look into the due diligence, which is very, very important. Maybe you can take a support of an outside party, a valuer or something like that. Go to the SCC, get their approval, and then also apply your mind and see whether this should be done or not. Well, the process is fine, but then we'll have to look at those aspects. Number two, I'm choosing between the absolute and recompensation. Well, again, it depends on facts and circumstances, as Mr. Ganti has very rightly said. But let me also honestly tell you one more aspect. A cash in hand is always better than the future thing. Because as Mr. Ganti has also mentioned, supposing it waits for 3 years. Well, then who is going to distribute? That is also another question, isn't it? So if I sell it and it's an absolute way, I'm going to get some money, liquidator gets money, he distributes, everyone is happy. So it's a win-win situation for all. Everyone goes back happily. But if you have to wait for, say, next 3 years or 5 years, there is an option. And in fact, I would not, I slightly differ from Mr. Ganti's, very valued opinion, in the sense that I do not want any institutions like IBBI or MCA to step in this. This is a process which is a private process. Let has the sanctity of the privatization be there. Well, if you go back to the BLRC report, because that is the genesis of IBC, they have actually looked into this aspect, that supposing they've only talked about recoveries from vulnerable transactions, so which are in the nature of NRRA only. They say that, look, once the liquidation process is over and this certain amount of money is pending on recoveries like NRRA, what liquidator should do is he can still move an application for closure of liquidation, but then he will be considered as a trustee. So a trust is formed, like a separate trust account is formed, where this money will come in the trust, and the liquidator, as and when the money comes, then of course he will distribute as a trustee to all the stakeholders in the ratio, whatever has been decided in accordance with section 53. This is what the one option which has been discussed in BLRC. Well, I would find, because you see, of course, future is uncertain. So therefore, it is always better to have a kind of an escrow account or a trust account where the trustees can also be nominated. Maybe we can have more than one trustee, right? So therefore, these problems can be sorted out. But I would like all institutions to be outside this. This is my personal opinion. I have nothing against them. But yes, the government interference should be to the minimum. Over to you, Nitesh.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. So with this, I would like to have the third of the questions in the series. So this question is to you, Subodh sir. So this question is, should this stakeholder consultation committee be consulted before assigning NRRA? And if yes, should it be mandatory for the liquidator to act as per the advice of SCC? This is in continuation to what Ashish sir has also a little bit spoken about this SSC. So this is in continuation to that, sir.
I'm afraid, as Mr. Ashish said, that if you don't agree, though in paper it is mentioned that you have to give reason and file to the progress report to AA, but I will not suggest as a senior or as a professional any of the liquidator to agree if 66% of the stakeholder committee, here 66% of the stakeholder committee means those present and voted. It is not like CIRP, where even if you are not present and you can vote electronic here, those present and voted of that 66%, if they do not agree. But yes, my view is the more the regulation, it is better for the liquidator. He will be protected from all sides. It's a shield. The stakeholder will be giving him a shield. So tomorrow, if any dispute comes, he will always have a minutes that 66% has agreed to that. So it is not my personal. So stakeholder committee under 31A should be there, and this 66% should be, let it be recommended, let it not be mandatory. But my suggestion to liquidator will be abide by that. Don't try to venture unless and until you have some proof to prove that there are some vested interests who want to stop or destroy the value of the asset. Over.
Yep. Thank you so much, sir. So, Ganti sir, would you like to add something to what Subodh sir has stated?
Yeah, I basically agree with what he says, though the code says that you need not accept the recommendation or the advice or the decision of the SEC, it is that you have to give reasons. Basically means the default option is you will accept. The exception is you will not accept. So exceptions by nature should be rare and have to be backed up by strong reasons. One thing is I think if I remember rightly, the 66% in the SEC is by number, not by value. And that can vitiate the decision making if the numbers are not right on that particular day of voting. One has to be careful.
Correct.
Okay.
So-
Nitish, I'll like to just come in here. Well,
Yes, sir.
I agree with Mr. Subodh Agarwal and Mr. Ganti that yes, precaution has to be taken, and if SEC is doing it, well, be that as it may, then liquidator should not try to impose his own will unless he has got certain data or to support or evidence. I would say credible evidence to support that yes, the value can be more or recoveries can be more. To overcome the present and voting kind of a scenario, supposing only 3 stakeholders are present instead of say 20 in all, then what happens? Supposing all of them decide but 17 have not joined that meeting, then what should be the call should be taken by the liquidator? Well, my suggestion is that liquidator informally of course can send them an email and maybe obtain their NOCs also, so that everyone is on board. Supposing 17 are opposing, say through an email, then of course he can again conduct another meeting, isn't it? So I think he has to be extremely cautious that before doing this. And I can also suggest one formula. If SEC says don't assign, I think abide by it. If SEC says assign, then you have to take a call whether the assignment is beneficial or not. Because there still you can say, because if the SEC says, okay, assign at 10% value. Now, if the liquidator is sure of getting 20%, right, 10% more than that, well, then of course he is free to decide that. But again, lot of caution, lot of precaution has to be undertaken. Credible evidence must be obtained. And as Subodhji has said very rightly, the market is not developed. Unless and until the market is developed, well, nobody can be sure what will be the value. So that is also one of the important steps the government should take, that it should try to develop that market. Okay,
Oh,
over
sir.
to you.
Yeah, correct, sir. So, Ganti sir, what it is coming out of discussion, what Ashish sir has stated that if suppose at 10% with 90% haircut, if we are moving, so the next question is in that scenario, what measures should be taken? What measures should be taken to ensure the assignment of NRRA results in maximization of value, which is one of the objectives of IBC also. So, what are your views rather on this?
Well, in a liquidation scenario, if the people who are supposed to get the money from the liquidation for the reasons that they can evaluate better are ready to accept a lower amount because bird in hand worth more than two in the bush, one should largely go with that. But okay, I would say, as a thought which I have tried elsewhere, that if somebody is saying, okay, I will sell this asset, a secured creditor, I will take it away, I will sell this asset, the realization is going to be much less than their claim. I have asked that creditor to say that you will not raise any further claim either on the company or anybody else beyond what you realize. This is full and final settlement. So the person who is supposed to get the money, if they are ready to take less, why should anybody else think about? Because there is nobody else left. Anyway, it is not going to come. Even at the best liquidation value, suppose their claims are 200, the liquidation value is 100, and the secured creditor, who is the only beneficiary of that, says, okay, I'm ready to sell it at 80 today and get the money and get out. Why would the liquidator or anybody want to interfere and say, no, आपको तो 100 लेना है, minimum, या 120 लेना है. So it makes no sense. It is trying to stuff food down an unwilling child's throat. नहीं खाना है तो नहीं खाना है. Okay, but the liquidator should protect himself by saying, okay, they are giving a full and final settlement. And that is exactly what the creditors do all the time with ARCs, right? They sell at a particular number and maybe with future upside participation or not, the deal should close. everything has to be time bound where money is concerned. It can't be like a 40-year liquidation where the operation is successful, but the patient died long ago.
True, sir. So this being an important question, so I would request both the other panelists also, Subodh sir and Ashish sir also. First, Subodh sir to you, and then Ashish sir, I will be coming to you, because this being an important question pertaining to maximization of value, and what Ganti sir has already stated, that if the creditors are willing to take what they have stated, so why the liquidator should come into between at all? So Subodh sir, would you like to add something to this?
Which question it is? A, B, C, D, E. Which question is
Sir,
it?
sir, we are going on D question. Question number D.
What we just should be taken to issue assignment. Yeah, right. See, again, you don't have to take any measure. Who are you to take measure? It's a free market economy. The market has to, the moment you say that you are going to take measure, that means you are inviting some problem. So market, for the moment you have to only demonstrate that the market has decided what is the value. Now, as I give the example of 100 crore of data, I know that if I go on even for 5 years, I'll not get even 1 crore rupees out of the 100 crore rupees. So let me put all the data in public domain when I go for auction of those details, and then let me invite the offers, and then there will be stakeholder committee. I, as a smart guy, I'll put whatever offers come in. I mean, before the stakeholder committee, if the stakeholder committee with 66% says, no, nothing doing, will not say like below 50 crore, I'll tag it at 50 crore rupees. But then side by side, I will put my view on record that what are the deficiency, because you are the person who are the eyes, ears, and nose of the stakeholder committee. So on record, I will put that what are the deficiency in this asset, so that it may not face 50%. It may face maybe less than 10%, 5%. So it has to be on record. That's all.
Thank you so much, sir. And Ashish sir, if you could also like to just enlighten us over this thing, if you can just have that.
Okay, I think Nitesh, this is a very important aspect.
Yes, sir.
As I mentioned in my opening comments also, that due diligence is required, and an extreme due diligence is required. Credible evidence is to be built, no doubt about it. Well, again, it is in the realms of uncertainty what is going to will. Let me give you an example. In one of the cases which we are handling in CIRP right now, the avoidance application has been made. And can you believe what is the amount of the recovery which we are expecting? 400 crores. It's not a small amount, 400 crore of rupees. Now, assuming that company comes into liquidation, the liquidator will have to take a call. Now, we don't know, because you see, everything depends upon the huge evidence. And I can tell you as a lawyer, my dear friends, recoveries under 66 or 43 to 51 are extremely difficult to get. NCLTs may pass an order today in your favor or in favor of the RPs, but it will not, you see, stop there. It will go to NCLAT. It is definitely going to go to Supreme Court. If 400 crore is involved, you can imagine it is going to go to the top court itself. So it's not going to be decided in next 1 year, 2 years, maybe it takes 5 years. So it's very difficult to estimate. Well, there could be a ready-made market for, say, receivables. We don't know. It can be developed. But where can be a ready-made market for these kind of things, avoidance transactions, recoveries? Well, we are not so mature at this stage. Maybe 5 years down the line, we may be discussing something different. Then second aspect, which is important is, of course, Mr. Subodh is absolutely right when he says the market should decide. The market forces, supply and demand should decide. But I must also share with you one of the experiences where there is a cartel. Actually, you see, we are seeing in liquidation, my dear friends, that the cartels are being formed. And once the cartels are, in fact, in one of the cases in High Court, when the sale was being taken up in winding a matter, and High Court used to conduct that public auction at 4 p.m. after all the court matters were over. Well, no bid came. There were 10 inspections done, but no bid came. But there were several people who were sitting in the court. Of course, the court was empty, but 7 people were sitting. So the honorable judge asked those people, he said, why you are sitting here? He said, no, my lords, we were just watching the proceedings. Because all those 7 people who had inspected, they were sitting there, they were just looking at the proceedings, formed a cartel outside, and then came back because they said, now the liquidator is going to reduce the reserve price. Next time we will bid. So cartelization is a reality, my dear friends. So therefore, one has to be extremely careful. We have seen The model of asset reconstruction companies also, I'm not sure whether it is successful or not. Well, some people say they are mafias. I don't know. I can't use those kind of words. But the fact of the matter is that we need to have a proper developed system, which should also be regulated. I can say that here the regulator must jump in to make sure that some kind of regulations are there to regulate those people also who are bidding, because it is beyond the control of the liquidator. So liquidator has to be extremely careful.
Here I would like to add, again, practical example. In one of my case, there were in the CRP process, EOI, there were 8 EOI, expression of interest. But when it came to the matter of filing the resolution plan, it was only 2. Should I tell it was a cartel, or should I, as a RP, what can I do? Even if I know what is happening behind the background, I can't say anything because I have to run the process as per the law. And if I become over enthusiastic, I'll be in trouble. That's all.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I agree with Mr. Subodh Agarwal that as a liquidator, we cannot do anything much on this. But what I can say is, because in one of the particular cases in High Court, when we noticed as official liquidator that there is a cartel, I made that as a judicial note in the file of the court. And the court in their order itself write that I am taking a judicial note. And what is the importance of a judicial note? The judicial note is it becomes an evidence. You don't have to prove it tomorrow. So therefore, if you can convince NCLT, I mean, your job is to inform NCLT that, look, these are my apprehensions. If NCLT takes a judicial note, well, it comes to your rescue later on. So I think those kind of things can be done. But practically, yes, Mr. Subodh Agarwal is absolutely right. You have to be extremely cautious and not over enthusiastic. Yes.
So thank you so much, Ashish sir and Subodh sir, on this particular question. But one of the points which I can construe what Ashish sir you have said, that at least if we can, because this is open for this is for a discussion. This is a discussion paper on which the comments of the stakeholders are required. So what you have suggested, that if we can suggest that if a regulator is there for having this regulation on the companies like ARC who would be there. So I think this could be one of the points we can give from our side. So moving ahead, I think this is the last question of what we are having. So Subodh sir, I will start with you for this particular question. Sir, this is the E question, the last one. So the question is, should the assignment of claim / interest be provided under liquidation regulations with a provision similar to that what is there in CIRP regulations?
Assignment of claim.
Yes, sir. Already that is there in the CIRP.
Correct. If you look at the definition, which is in the discussion paper also, so far as assignment is there, so if the operational creditor or financial creditor, the definition is applicable in case of the liquidation also. If some financial creditor, he has become financial creditor by way of, say, Synergy Dure. If Millennium comes in Synergy Dure, he will be taken as a financial creditor. But if it is a fortune, if it is not financial creditor in CIRP, it cannot be financial creditor in liquidation also. So far as only claim is there, since it is in the definition is applicable to liquidation as well as CIRP, it is there. The problem is cause of action. So the cause of action, assignment of the cause of action is not there. So that has to be modified and has to be brought in. So if that can be modified and brought in the regulation, probably that will take care of. So that is what, yes, it should be there in the liquidation also. That is my view.
Thank you, sir. So Ashish sir, what's your view? Are you also affirmative on this?
Well, as far as assignment is concerned, Nitesh, it is very clear. Like supposing I'm an operational creditor, I have my choice. I can assign it to anyone. So there should not be any restriction. It's a matter of contract. It's an Indian Contract Act which applies here. In fact, the corporate debtor is not at all involved in this. See, I'm definitely entitled to assign it to somebody, which is already covered in the definition itself. So I think this is the most easiest part. Yes, assignment of claim, which is done by operational creditors or financial creditors. Yes, it should be allowed. And two, unless the liquidator has you see a cause of suspicion, or there is a suspect is there that, look, this is not a genuine transaction, I think then he should not go into those kind of details. It should be provided, and it should be quite similar to CIRP regulation. So I definitely go for this. One more aspect which I want to mention, Nitesh, before we have a general discussion or maybe have the questions of the audience. Well, NRRA, I have given you a few examples which are also mentioned in discussion paper, but the definition of NRRA is not clear to us. Particularly, it is not clear to me, even if I go by the regulations. Well, some people can say these interpretations will be done over a period of time by the adjudicating authorities, but then it is going to cause a lot of confusion. So we must be very clear about what do you mean by NRRA. I mean, supposing I'm not able to sell a land, say 300 acres for 2 failed auctions, can I consider it as NRRA now? Or should we restrict it only to say 10% or 20% or 50% of the total assets to be considered as NRRA? I don't know. I mean, these kind of questions are going to be raised on liquidators later on. So I think the more the clarity is, what is the definition of NRRA? What should be the extent? Can 100% of the assets can be treated as NRRA? Well, that is another big question. Some people may say it depends on the facts and circumstances of each case. Well, I don't know at this stage what should be there. But I think this needs to be looked into as less as discretionary powers, as Mr. Subodh has also mentioned. I fully agree with him. Less the discretionary powers on liquidator, the more safe he is.
Correct, sir. Correct. What you are saying that the discretionary power should be at least on the liquidator. So, Ganti sir, just in a minute or so, if you can also, we would like to comment
on this last question,
yes.
I think it is redundant.
Oh.
It should not have been there in the CIRP regulation because it is in the definition itself, and it is the law of the land. Unless excluded, all rights remain, those which are available under different laws. So I think instead of adding it under liquidation, they should remove it from CIRP regulation because it is there. It's part of the definition. The more regulations you add, the more it is open to interpretation. Different types, people will take it differently. Why get into it? It should go from CIRP itself.
So again, wonderful view of Ganti sir that this question is not at all required in this paragraph of 49th paragraph of this discussion paper. So Makhija sir, would you like to just add to this? Because this is something very innovative what we have got, because Ganti sir is saying that this is a redundant question. This question should not have been there. So your views are on this?
Well, as a legal person, I agree with him. The lesser the regulations, the better it is, because then you are open to speculations and a lot of interpretations here and there, because the language is not definitive most of the time. So I think lesser the regulations to that extent, which is the law is on the aspects on which the law is absolutely clear. Why should we have those kind of things?
Exactly.
I think I agree with him. I fully agree.
So already this we are having there, both our visionary panelists are saying that already, because we are having this, so why we at all want a separate things to be included in this regulation. So I think, sir, thanks to all the 3 panelists for having a great insight on this of the questions also. What Makhija sir initially introduced the entire paper to us, and later on we had discussed the questions which were there in para 49 of this discussion paper. So I think, sir, we can now start with several questions I am having. I can just start having these questions, and just on a lighter note, I would just like to share. अभी सारे लोग है ना वो नवीन खन्ना जी के नाम से, मतलब आई थिंक ये लिंक ऐसा कुछ हो गया था, ये सब लोग नवीन खन्ना जी के नाम से, मतलब आई हैव बीन आल्सो एंटरिंग बाय नेम ऑफ, सो ऑलरेडी ऑल ऑफ देम आर एंटरिंग बाय नेम ऑफ नवीन खन्ना जी. So तो मतलब we are having several Naveen Khanna ji as of now as participants. I think more than 50 there are as participants by name of Naveen Khanna ji. So
I think in the chat box most of them have written their name also. So
yes, sir.
There is a facility to rename also. Maybe
yes,
they can
sir.
rename. So there is some problem in the link or something. Anyhow.
Okay.
I think Prakhar, if you please tell everybody how to rename.
Sir, I have already sent a message to.
Yes, sent. That is.
Yes, you should go through to the 3 dots on the right, and then click on that. It will come. The rename option will come.
Yes, sir.
So I think, sir, we can start with the questions. And sir, first question, Makhija sir, I am raising this question to you. Sir, this question is by Mr. Majumdar. So he's saying that can the NPRA be given to valuer for valuation based on probability of fetching money on different counts?
I think this should be done, because before, you see, even SEC takes a call, they also need material before them, that what can be recovered. So if the valuer is saying that, look, based on these, my assessment, this will be the recovery, then there will be a realistic assessment done by the liquidator that how much he can, because if he has already sent a legal notice for recovery, what is the response received from that party? So all those factors will have to be placed. All evidence should be placed before SEC. This is what IBBI also says, that in their agenda, they must consider these 5-7 items. I think what they have mentioned is absolutely right. Based on that, they must take a call.
And sir, how do you feel that this estimation will be done by valuer also, considering the very peculiar and very, you can say, a difficult nature of all the assets which are involved in this?
Well, I'm not a registered valuer. I cannot comment. Maybe those who are registered valuers, maybe I think Mr. Subodh is in a better position to answer.
So, Subodh sir, would you like to come into this? What has constituted out of this?
My apology, I could not listen this question. So if you can
Sir,
give it to some other panelists, then
Okay.
in the last I
Okay,
can
sir.
comment.
Okay, sir. Actually, the point came of valuation, and you being a valuer, what Makija sir was telling. So I thought we thought that you can just enlighten us. Sir, not an issue. I think what Makija sir
I'm
has
also
said.
not a valuer. That way, I'm also
Acha.
not a valuer.
Okay. So Makija sir, we will have to find out some valuer in this.
Let me just interject here
Yes.
about valuation.
Yes,
See,
sir.
at the end of the day, valuation in a distressed asset situation is just an opinion. It's not fact. And the best valuations can go horribly wrong. So valuers, obviously, because they are regulated, will play safe, go by whatever is the last published rate for the land, circle rate, etc., and try to give something which may be far from the reality. Real assets themselves are concerned. Now you are coming to NRRA. You can see the problem multiplies many-fold. It's something which is almost impossible for any valuer to give with any degree of certainty. I can give an example, live example, where this is an insurance claim which is being challenged in court by the insurance company. So there is an order in favor of the CD. The case is there. We know it will take 4 to 5 years because of the amount involved. They will go all the way to Supreme Court. Minimum 4 to 5 years. Now, what is the value you will assign to that when you want to assign it? It may be that it will get turned away in appeal and you just lose the case. It can be that. Or it can be that you finally win it after multiple appeals, but a lot of cost in litigation. I don't think anybody can value that. This is speculative valuation at best, I would say. Closer to share valuation when you want to buy shares for speculation, not very different from that. And only a buyer can see the value in that. No valuer can really say this is what it should be. So it will be better if instead of just valuations, that the SEC sits down and deliberates over a period of time, not just once, but 2-3 rounds of what can it be, how will we go about it, shall we just say that we will give a certain percentage of recovery, or shall we say assign it at a particular value, or a mix of both, or shall we say, okay, all litigation cost will be to our account, if any, plus this. Each one will have a different solution. Okay,
Fine,
guidelines, yes. Rules, no.
Fine, sir, fine. Thank you so much, sir. So, and sir, this is a question which already Makija sir has raised in his deliberation. Criteria to be fixed to declare an asset as this NRRA. So, Makija sir, would you like to add to this? Already you have given that this should be described in detail, that what are the criteria. But again, would you like to add something more to this?
Well, that is what I have mentioned, that when we have regulations, we must have clarity. We should not bring in a regulation which actually compounds the confusion, which is already there. I think the job of liquidator is already difficult. We should not make it more difficult by giving him a lot of more discretionary powers. Well, yes, discretion is required, but then discretion with some restrictions. So there should be a broad parameter or a criteria which must be developed that yes, this asset falls within the four corners of NRRA. Only then it should be considered, and not a normal asset which you can sell it on your own. I mean, otherwise, if liquidators start, 100% of the assets as NRRA, I don't think that's a good idea. So therefore, there should be some criteria which must be there. So IBBI has to definitely look into this.
So, sir, as stakeholders, I think we can write to IBBI for getting a clarification on this. This can be part from our side, which we can play. So, sir, Ganti sir, although not related to our discussion paper, but this question is like, can RP, based on the documents and backups, write off doubtful debtors to the extent not recoverable while updating books of records of CD as the start of liquidation?
RP liquidation, okay. IP, right?
Yeah, IP. It's RP. Yes,
IP and not RP. Okay.
Yes, it's IP.
The liquidator writing off, liquidator has no right to tamper with the books of accounts. He just has to bring them up to date. That's all the mandate. After that, whatever you can realize, you realize. What you cannot realize, either it is NRRA or onerous property, or you go to NCLT and seek permission that I can't do beyond this and give me order of dissolution. A liquidator has absolutely books of accounts. All he can do is update the books of accounts.
Great, sir. So, sir, this question is Subodh sir, if you're comfortable, can I come to you?
Yeah, tell me.
So, sir, this is a long question. So, this is like, since commencement of CIRP till now in liquidation, some assets are in the custody of RP, now liquidator, where title of ownership is not known. Also, no way to find the same as the assets are wheels, engines, and other parts of motor vehicles, which are extras, which were kept along with other intact vehicles. What should be the solution for finding out? I think the question the participant wants to ask that how the title can be established that the title belongs to the CD. And if title is established, can the liquidator sell them? If title is established, can the liquidator sell them?
We need to look at the particular section which deals with the liquidation estate. In liquidation estate, it clearly says that what can come into liquidation estate, what cannot come into liquidation estate. The asset is in your possession does not mean that it belongs to you. Even if it is in your possession, as a belly, you cannot sell it because the title is not in your name. So the liquidator has to first prove that yes, the asset belongs to the corporate debtor. Even if asset belongs to the corporate debtor, the possession is with somebody else. He can always bring it to by way of the NCLT order or other order into the liquidation estate. So title deed on that question particularly, I would not like to comment. I would only like to comment that it is appearing in the books of the accounts. If it is appearing in the books of accounts, is it not fraudulently taken into account? It belongs to the ownership is with the corporate debtor. If it is there, he can always the duplicate title deed can be find out. Those things can be done, and then he can sell the asset. Otherwise, even if it is in possession, he has to give it back to the real owner. That's all.
So, thank you so much, sir. Ashish sir, what about the cost of recovering NRRA? Will they be net of relation? Obviously, I think that will be net of relations only. So, are you, sir, can you unmute yourself? Ashish sir, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, it has to be net of realization. There is no quarrel on that. Obviously, that is I mean, if a liquidator is doing that, so that's part of the liquidation cost.
Exactly, sir. Exactly.
So that should be there.
So, sir, then
I'll just take up the previous question. I think as far as the motor vehicles are concerned, we have got an, application now. An app is there where you can know which assets are in the name of the CD and which assets are. So you just feed the number, I think you get the ownership details. So I don't think it is difficult to get the name of the owner. And those which are owned by the company, well, yes, they will part of the liquidation estate, but there is one more caution. Supposing the funds of the company have been used, but the asset is registered in somebody else's name, then of course there is a dispute which starts. So which also again has to be taken care of. whether the funds of the company have been used to buy that asset, because there could be a Benami kind of an asset which could be there. So that also needs to be taken care of. So liquidator's job is not easy, my dear friend. This is a thankless job.
And sir, Ganti sir is dealing in more than 9 liquidation, what was told in his introduction.
We should be thankful to him.
So,
Now, on this particular question which came, I think it was referring to a auto dealership under liquidation. And
so sir,
these are
actually,
spare parts lying around.
exactly.
And
exactly.
the book, and the
They were
books
not
are,
identifiable. They were not identifiable to the title of the CD.
because the books are either missing or incomplete.
That could be there, sir.
They come from two sources: either the seller of the automobile itself, that is the manufacturing company, whether they have anything lying there which are unpaid, and the other is anybody who has given it for repairs और उसको निकाल के रख दिया है, वही है. Repair है तो गाड़ी होगी, गाड़ी नहीं है, like that can be found out. If it is new parts, most likely they will be owned, but books may not be up to date. That's
So, as far as the major assets are concerned, Nitesh, I think it's much easier. I think what it can be done is maybe a public announcement can be made that these are the assets which are lying. If anyone doesn't claim an ownership, then they will be sold. I think you have to adopt a cautious approach.
True, sir, true. So, sir, I think that is a question which I think with sitting with three of you visionaries, I can also try a hand on this question, and I think I can also answer this. So the question, and if it is I am answering wrong, definitely you can guide us. So if the liquidator takes SEC approval, is he adequately protected if higher relation? So it is a type of thing that if the relation is on a higher side, so I don't think that anyone would mind. The creditors are also in a very good position that what they have expected, they have got more than that. So I don't think that there is any problem for liquidator for that matter. Sir, if any of you are having any different views over this.
No, what was the question, exact question? I couldn't understand.
Sir, question is that if suppose the SCC decides a 10 rupees after a haircut of 90 rupees, 10 rupees as the final price, and if they are able to fetch 15 rupees, will this be causing any problem to the liquidator? So I don't find that there will be any problem to the liquidator.
Yeah, I mean, if SEC says assign it at 10%, and liquidator is able to sell and is actually recovered 15 rupees, well, I think they are better off. There is no quarrel to that. But supposing he is able to recover only 8, then he's in trouble. So he has to be careful.
Sir, this question is, can NCLT order, Ganti sir, just would like your attention on this. Can NCLT order arbitration proceeding assignment is binding on the arbitrator on disputing property? So I think, sir, question is, can NCLT order? This question is, I will request the participant to just post this question at length so that we are also able to understand. So I will request that this question can be reposted again with certain more details. So the next question is, at what point of time NRRA could be assigned? Is it before expiry of 1 year or after? Ganti sir, can you put your views on this?
The question of NRRA is, okay, it starts with something similar to vulnerable transaction, that the liquidator starts applying the mind from the initial days, okay, the first month or so, okay, what could be, not necessarily is. But I don't think any liquidator should jump to it at least till 6 to 9 months have elapsed, and at least one round of auction has happened, at least one. Unless, of course, the asset is so onerous that nothing, it's not going to come, it's tied up in litigation, then one can, at an early stage go through the process. But without SEC approval, absolute no.
Okay, sir. Sir, then this, so what, sir, this question is, if operational creditor is assignee will be treated as operational creditor or FC in district. So it is not like that. If it is OC at inception, it will always be OC, and if it is FC, then it will be FC.
Right. Yeah,
so
if OC is OC, FC is
interesting fallout of this, which has not been addressed. It's not exactly of this topic, but assignment. Ashish ji, if you can answer, if it is related before, is it related after?
There are two, three things which are very, very important. Number one, as far as the classification of that creditor is concerned, the classification is based on the underlying documents. So if it's an OC, nature in OC, obviously it will remain as OC. It cannot change even if it is acquired by a bank or something. So I think we are clear on that account. Your question is because there is an NCLAT judgment which says that assignee steps into the shoes. So therefore, whatever you can say he was affecting those conditions, like if he was a related party, then he also becomes a related party. Well, Mr. Ganti, with respect, I differ with that judgment, because the position of related party or non-related party has to be seen on a particular day. That means if supposing it was a related party debt prior to that, but it has been taken over by a non-related party, you cannot consider saying that he also takes with all these disabilities. Now let us take it reverse the coin. If it was a non-related party and it is taken over by a related party, then what you will treat him? Will you treat him as a non-related party? So therefore, the reverse of the coin should also always be true. That is why I always test the opinion in two formats. So I think with respect that NCLAT judgment is not correct. I'm putting my views there also. Yes.
So sir, this was in addition. So Subodh sir, this is a question which is like in line with regulations on auction. Can private sale also be conducted with 75% drop in the reserve price after failure of two auction in accordance with clause 1(4) of the Schedule 1 of the liquidation regulation?
Private sale is an exception. So to justify private sale, you need to have a liquidator, need to have a documentation, and private sale should not be dare to be taken. Number one, it should not be dare to be taken up. Number two, even if somebody feels that it is NRRA or it cannot be sold in the public auction, then stakeholder committee need to have maybe not 66%. It is more than 66% should be there. And then see perishable nature. You have no choice. You have to, even maybe in the initial stage itself, you can decide to go for the private sale, not for the liquidation, not for the auction. So on a fact and circumstances, one need to decide on the private sale.
Okay, and Nitesh, if you can just give me a moment on this.
Yes, yes, sir. Please, sir. Please.
Interesting question. In fact, well, I would say that as far as the public auction is concerned, there is a schedule which is attached. You have to follow that schedule, whether it is NRRA, whether it is not NRRA. So there should not be any doubt on this. Number one. Number two, as far as private sale is concerned, I agree with Mr. Subodhji. One has to be extremely careful while doing it. And in fact, if I'm not wrong, Mr. Ganti can obviously confirm this. I think in a private sale, you need to have the approval of the adjudicating authority also prior to doing the private sale. If I'm not wrong, I think regulations say that also. So your precautions are there, like SCC, Mr. Subodh has mentioned, there is an adjudicating authority. Well, then you are safe.
And private sale will come in, as Subodhji said, extremely rare cases.
Exceptional situation.
Yeah, and why would liquidator want to get into private sale?
Private sale at all.
Yeah, you can always tell the creditor, use section 52 and take it away. Take
Exactly,
it out of my, you do whatever you want.
Well, I can give you a few examples, sir. What happened in High Court? There were certain items which were there. There were kind of iron rods which were lying in Mumbai, but a company which was based in Delhi, they had some go down there. Well, a valuer was appointed. He valued at say 5 lakh rupees. When the auction was conducted by High Court, no bid came. It was reduced. So again, a revaluation was done. Then it came out to be 3 lakh rupees. So then the reserve price was fixed at 3. No bid came. Well, then 5-6 bidders were sitting there, but they have never bid. So High Court asked them, I said, why have you not bid? He said, sir, your valuation is wrong. They are all rusted. They are not more than worth 30,000 rupees. So then this High Court said that, look, I don't want to conduct a public auction because a public auction means advertisement will take 50,000 rupees. The value is only 50,000. I permit liquidator to sell it by private sale. So private sale is possible, in case of perishable, where the cost of advertisement is also more than the cost what you are going to recover. So those things are there, but yes, it has to be extremely exceptional, no doubt about it.
So, sir, this could be the only genuine reason that when the cost of publication is higher than what you are going to realize. So, this is an exceptional situation. So, very correctly you have stated. Sir, the next question is, Ashish sir, this is to you. Why assignment already? Because I think what Ganti sir has said, this is in connection to that only. So that is the reason I am raising it to you to get your view also over this. Why assignment of NRRA is a part of liquidation process and not as a part of CIRP? Shouldn't this be considered as CIRP for better relation?
Okay, why assignment of NRRA as part of liquidity, not part of CIRP? Okay, because in CIRP, you are not actually selling the asset. Please understand. Well, what we are doing is in CIRP, we are trying to bring a resolution process, a resolution, plan. And resolution plan, the person who is bidding, he will always take into consideration what is the recovery rate, only then he will bid that. So I think these factors are already taken into consideration while submitting a resolution plan. So I think our friends will realize that realization is only done in liquidation and not in CIRP.
Not in CIRP. So, Ganti sir, this is question related particularly to you because this is real estate liquidation. So, they are saying you being handling such a good number of liquidations and that particularly in real estate industry. So, in real estate liquidation, can an unfinished building be considered as NRRA?
Well, it doesn't go that way actually, because the company won't be in liquidation if it was finished, right? They would have sold it, and
Exactly.
so almost every real estate project would be at some degree of completion. Lacking some degree of completion. So that is part of that. You sell it as a project. It is not an NRRA because what NRRA is that, as Ashish ji right in beginning said, uncertainty of time, uncertainty of amount, both should be there, and strongly. Okay, it's not just one, it's usually both. In a building which is not fully complete, it is still sellable. It's a question of value. So why would it say it is NRRA? No, I would not say it is NRRA. NRRA are largely either intangibles or actionable claims which have attached to them. A physical asset is usually not an NRRA. Usually, there may be some extreme example which somebody can come up with, which might be there, but otherwise, I would never classify, in general, any physical asset by category.
Well, so if you permit me, I can just
yes,
one example. I can give you one example, Mr.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Supposing a 1 acre land which is there, and there are 100 people who are sitting as maybe squatters are sitting, and there are 100 title suits going on. Well, it is not readily, easily realizable asset. So even a land can also be an NRRA, but yes, facts and circumstances. Generally speaking, real estate.
It will be rare. It will be rare. Yes, and of course, either it could also come under the onerous category. Where the or disputed itself. The title itself is non-known, or it is disputed. Then till such a title is settled, it is not even part of the liquidation estate, strictly speaking.
Well, in fact, if the choice has to be made between onerous disclaimer and selling as an NRA, I'll prefer the latter one. You see, disclaimer, you are not getting anything. It is better if you get something in NRRA. Well, that is much better.
So, sir, rather I can suggest one more thing into this. This can, if the things are permissible, so this builder, the CD should go to Swami Fund to get the assistance, to get the project completed. Swami Fund, they are funding the unfinished projects. So if that is possible, if the eligibility criteria are met, so they can go to Swami Fund for getting the funding for instead of having discussion like NRRA or something like that. So this can go to Swami Fund. If I'm right, sir, Ganti sir, you can just suggest it.
See, the Swami Fund is a funding mechanism with certain criteria of funding incomplete projects.
Yes, sir.
That is, they are not buyers. They are
not buyers. They can fund for completing the project.
Who is an eligible buyer?
Yes,
so
yes,
first
yes,
of all, you have to get a buyer. The question here was, can it be realized? Yes, it mostly yes, except certain cases like where there are 100 or more, it's a family dispute, title is not clear, things like that. Other than that, most of the time you can get a buyer. Question is at what price?
Exactly.
That is commercial. Okay, the market decides. Tomorrow there is a real estate boom again. The same thing which you couldn't get 10 rupees today, you can get 100 tomorrow.
Okay, sir. Thank you. And sir, moving to next question. Subodh sir, I am raising this question to you. So, how the liquidator to deal with the cases of receivables for which notices sent, returned undelivered, reply received saying the dues or partly payable against the demand amount, and notices delivered but not responded?
You want answer?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm facing this question in all the cases, wherever. Somewhere 2,000 crore rupees receivable, somewhere 500 crore rupees receivable. And that's why in my opening remarks, I raised. And my view is, these are the NRRAs. Here, the role of the last question you asked with Makhija ji, regarding the NRRA. In CIRP, there cannot be any error. NRRA, it's a resolution. So NRRA comes when you are going to
Liquidation.
sell something. So in NRRA, these are the things where the liquidator roles comes great. He need to put every fact and figure that what are the dates where the address is not traceable, even from his effort he could not, or from personal visit. What are the dates where dispute has been raised that there is a debit and credit note, and what are the dates? So if all the fact and figures are put in, and how old the dates are, as we all understand, the older the dates, the chances of realizability becomes very poorer. In one of my case, we tried to involve factoring. So, but the factoring, in what I was amazed, it was a 2,000 crore rupees of debt. Factoring simply said that we will charge you the percentage. If we are able to realize, we will charge 5%, but we are not giving any guarantee. So fine, at one point of time, you can try that, but then you need to have a time frame, because again, if you are coming to the liquidation, why NRRA has been trying to be brought in, that if you can complete, if NRRA is brought in, can you complete the process in 1 year? Because in liquidation, it is going beyond 2, 3, 4 years also. So if that time frame can be, but then liquidator has to be very smart, very hardworking to bring, for NRRA cases at least, bring all fact and figure, so that you can get again, fair market has to be there. So market will develop, it will take some time. So it will address with passage of the time.
Okay, sir. So then there is a question. Makhija sir, I would like you to comment for this question. Usually the arbitration proceedings are not assignable and no. Can I request the participants to? Sir, there is an invitation of dinner also, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, sir, go ahead.
So usually the arbitration proceedings are not assignable and no precedent legal cases. The protection to the assignee is not by NCLT order if disputed by the opposite party. The question is whether NCLT order would give him the right to get such assignment from a liquidator.
Well, the question is not very clear.
Yes, sir. Yes, yes.
Let me bifurcate what I can understand. Let me bifurcate into two parts. What we are talking about, my dear friends, is we are assignment of the asset and not of the proceedings. So if I'm assigning an asset and if it is disputed, obviously those disputes will also go along with that. Supposing if in a claim where an arbitration proceeding or suit is going on, well, the owner now will take responsibility. The assignee will take the responsibility of handling those arbitration proceedings or the suit proceedings. So it has to go along with that. Here at this stage, NCLT is not coming in picture. Please understand, assignment of NRRA is the discretion of the liquidator. There is no way that NCLT is coming in the picture at this stage. So there is no assignment of arbitration proceedings by NCLT. So that is what I could understand from this question.
Okay, sir. Ganti sir, I am raising this question to you. After NCLT orders for liquidation, can promoter of CD can apply under section 12A within 90 days of order of NCLT?
I think 12A is under CIRP part.
CIRP, that is in CIRP.
Yeah, there is no, once the liquidation order has come in, the companies
that goes on.
effectively cease to exist.
Yes, yes, sir.
So I think the alternative to 12A is come out with a 230
Right.
scheme of compromise or arrangement, or sell it as a going concern. So I
Yes.
think those options are already on table.
Subject to 29A.
Yes, absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
So, sir, then this is
But Nitesh talk only about the 29A, I mean promoters. So everything is closed for promoters the moment liquidation, it comes into liquidation.
great, sir. Great input, sir. Sir, then this is a question. Subodh sir, this question I am raising it to you. Can the reserve price be decided by the liquidator higher than the average of the amount of two valuation reports, or it should be based on the valuation reports only? So I think, sir, we have already deliberated on this, that liquidator should not just try to take his wisdom. I think whatever has been suggested, I think he should go by that.
No. In this, see, it is not a binding. You can always go higher. And provided, obviously, now on why you are actually setting it higher. Okay, circumstances would have changed. The last which have ceased to exist, or certain clarity of law has come about which raises the value. So why should you go by the old valuation report if there is a possibility that it should be higher? Obviously, the code and regulations now permit a second valuation to be done under such circumstances. Ideally, that is the better option. Instead of just using your own wisdom, get a second valuation done.
No, sir, already the question is saying that there are two valuations and average amount of two valuations, or the valuer can go even higher of that. Already second valuation is in consideration. Second value we are having that second value also. So we should go with the average value, or liquidator can go even higher to that value.
No, I think the two valuations that the question talks about is two valuers at the same time.
Two valuers at the same time.
Two separate valuation exercises, one during CIRP and one during
No,
liquidation.
sir, can I come in? That was my question. Hello? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. See, in this case, what happened is during CIRP, we had got two valuation done. Okay. And the company is in liquidation right now, but we have not done one more valuation. Now, the thing is, when we are fixing up the reserve price, should we adhere to the average of those two valuation reports which we already obtained? Can we go higher, or should we take a new valuation report?
Okay, if I can answer this, Nitesh.
Yes, sir, please.
Let us understand, ma'am. The average of the reserve prices is nothing but a benchmark. That is a minimum. You can't go down below this. That is what you have to understand this way. If you want to go higher, nobody is stopping you, as Mr. Ganti also mentioned about it. Well, two CIRP valuations have been done. Now you can take another third one also if you feel that the value has gone up, because if it's a value of land, building, or whatever, other assets are depreciable, but supposing the land is there, so obviously the value can go up. So therefore, take a third one, take a call. You can always have a choice of have a higher reserve price than the average valuation. No one is stopping you. But only thing is, you also need to consider that supposing you are not able to sell at that reserve price, then who is going to bear the next public announcement cost? So you'll have to take a call of expenses vis-a-vis the recovery which is there. In fact, I must share one of these small anecdote which happened in High Court. Again, a reserve price was fixed at say 2 crore rupees. When the public auction started, the judge was very good in raising the counter bidding because the bidders were there. Well, can you believe 1 crore rupees, which was a reserve price, he sold the land at 6 crore rupees. So can you imagine? And once he did that, then he said, asked the official liquidator, I said, who valued this property? He said, so-and-so person. He says, issue him a show cause notice. Why he valued at 1 crore, then I can sell it at 6 crore. So therefore, take a call. If you can do that, please go ahead. Don't worry about it.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, and sir, I think with this, we have finished the questions. If any of the participants, if they are still having, so they can put their questions in chat box. I think whatever questions that were there in the chat box, I have tried to take all the relevant questions, and our esteemed panelists have answered them in a very lucid manner. So if any of
I have one question, Nitesh.
Yes, sir.
It is about the fee. Say there is 100 crore of asset, but it's not a consortium finance. It's a single member COC or two member but multiple banking. And under section 52, they did not relinquish. The secured creditor took back their asset. Now the asset remaining in the hand of the liquidator is only 5 crore rupees. 95 crore of asset has been taken back by the secured creditor to be sold by them. Now my question is, as a professional, fee on what amount he will be going to get, on 100 crore or on 5 crore rupees?
So sir, I think
I can take the risk of answering this.
yes, sir, please.
In fact, this question Subodh is asking is a very relevant question. In fact, this came in the early stages of the liquidation. Also, many liquidators actually sought my legal opinion on this. Well, I want to say that yes, you should be entitled on a fees. That I'm saying you should be. But if we look at the legal provisions, my dear friends, the realization has not been done by the liquidator. So if he is not realizing it, he is not entitled. So if I'm going by the language of the law, the fee and the regulation 4 of the liquidation regulations, he is not entitled to something which he has not realized. Yes, the share of the money which will come back to the kitty, like in the form of, say, a proportionate amount of liquidation cost, proportionate amount of CRP cost, proportionate amount of the workman dues. Well, then he can say he has realized that amount and then he is distributed. He can claim only on that amount. So I'm taking the risk. Maybe liquidators will not be happy on this. I know that, but this is the legal position, my dear friends.
So, sir, before just finalizing all the question, there is a question which is coming to my mind, and I just would like that if for 30 seconds all of the three gentlemen can answer this question, because I am a person who has just passed out my exam, and immediately this code was suspended. So, sir, how do you see the prospects for a person like me who in the entire lockdown completed his classes and everything? So, Subodh sir, you were also there while taking our classes. Makhija sir, you were also there when I was taking my pre-registration batch. So, Ganti sir, because Subodh sir is our past president of ICI, and Makhija sir, we are regularly interacting. So, Ganti sir, I will start with you, because several of us might be facing this type of situation. So, what silver lining you see in the coming future?
Well, let me put it this way. Distressed asset is never a good thing. Having made that statement, what is going to come is going to be much worse than what we have seen till today. This entire 6-month period, it's not a 6-month period. It is, let us say, going to be for about 2 years. This thing will get hidden. It will be a flood of cases that are going to come a year, 1.5 years down the line. And the same issue which started in 2017, 16, 17, when IBC first came into being, you will have so many cases and they will have the same problems. Suspension was the need of the hour politically, but it is not a good thing economically, because all you have done is postpone it to another day, and the realizable money may not get interest, but the problem is going to accumulate, because wahan interest ka meter kam nahi hota. The problems only keep multiplying with time. They never go away.
Okay, sir. Subodh sir, if I just add one thing more into this, आपको ऐसा लगता है कि अगर मान लीजिए after a year or so, this what Ganti sir has said, that will be a situation will not be that easy. So, do you think कि हमारे पास में कोई CIRP या इसमें कोई takers होंगे, इस तरीके resolution होगा या liquidation अगर होता है तो will we find any takers for this?
देखिए, अभी पहला तो ये है कि अभी जो रुका है, अभी जो CIRP रुका है, तो केवल अभी जो आज से डिफॉल्ट होगा वो रुका है, पुराना वाला डिफॉल्ट तो
चल रहा है। ट्रू।
तो वहां पर नितेश जी, आपको चिंता करने की जरूरत नहीं है, आपके लिए बहुत काम आ रहा है, और बैंकर्स अभी ज्यादा एग्रेसिव हो रहे हैं, क्योंकि उनका नया NPO होना है, जहां पर अगर आप घोड़े पे चढ़ोगे तो गिरोगे, जो बिजनेस करेगा वो डिफॉल्ट करेगा। तो ये चाहे गंती जी उसके लिए कुछ भी बोले, स्ट्रेस तो इंडस्ट्री में आना है। अगर आप कैपिटल सोसाइटी है तो स्ट्रेस होगा, और स्ट्रेस होना खराब बात नहीं है, अच्छी बात है। एक को स्ट्रेस होगा, अच्छे लोग आएंगे उसको लेके जाएंगे। अब इशू ये आ रहा है कि इस टाइम, यस गलती सर, Can you wrap-
I think maybe I was not clear. I said it will be more. The stress will be more,
Yeah.
not less.
already
वो है तो केसेस बढ़ेंगे, कम नहीं होंगे.
सर ऑलरेडी डेटा आ चुके हैं कि अगर आज के दिन में अगर हम एक्चुअल स्ट्रेस देखें तो 15 लाख करोड़ से नीचे का स्ट्रेस नहीं मिलेगा. जीडीपी हमारी क्वार्टर टू क्वार्टर -30% में गई है. पहले हम बात कर रहे थे कि 2020 केवल खराब होगा, 2021 ठीक होगा, लेकिन जिस हिसाब से नीचे गया है इसको वापस आने में शायद 2021 भी निकल जाए, और जितना डिले होगा उतना ही ज्यादा स्ट्रेस आएगा. तो स्ट्रेस रहेगा. नितेश जी, आपको चिंता की जरूरत नहीं है. हमारे भाई लोग यहाँ जो बैठे हैं उनको चिंता की जरूरत नहीं है. बस हमको ये चिंता करना कि हम जो भी काम करें मन से करें, ईमानदारी से करें, देश को ध्यान में रखते हुए करें कि इट्स द इकोनॉमिक रिसोर्सेज, इट्स नॉट इंडिविजुअल. प्रोमोटर इज ओनली अ पर्सन हु फैसिलिटेट, हु कम्स एंड हु गोज. इसीलिए अगर एक प्रमोटर आके कोई दूसरा प्रमोटर आता है, दिक्कत नहीं. तो हम लोग अगर ईमानदारी से काम करेंगे, काम निकलता रहेगा, देश को फायदा होता रहेगा. मेरे को कहना है.
Great, sir.
I want to ask, I am Ramesh from Hyderabad. I am a liquidator of a large power plant. So it is not just a buyer's market, there is no market at all.
Exactly.
So as a liquidator, what is the freedom I have to do the marketing? Because it may involve international people to be attracted. So asset memorandum is a confidential document. But I always get a doubt, can I go and openly advertise, I'm a liquidator of so-and-so company, I want to sell it. So what is the limitations on marketing which I can do without affecting the confidentiality or whatever?
Mr. Ramesh, I know, you see, these are infrastructure projects, particularly power projects are very difficult to sell. There is obviously the market is pretty limited. Well, there are 2-3 options which are available. Definitely as a liquidator, you are in fiduciary capacity. You have to get the maximum value for the benefit of the creditors. There is no quarrel to that aspect. So looking at that objective in view, definitely you need to do your best. You can appoint a process advisor like we do in many cases of CIRP, where the best resolution plan must come. You can decide their fees on a success fee, that if they bring in, then only then that fees will be given to them, or maybe a very nominal fee as to be given at the initial stages, then the rest is based on a success fee, and many of the agencies are doing like that also. So you can definitely explore all the options, because you have already seen on the basis of the reports that it is not saleable, right? You have also tried. If it is not saleable 1, 2, or 3 times, obviously you'll have to take some outside help. So outside help can be a marketing agency, or it can be a process advisor. Do your own due diligence on that. Get their quotes invited, appoint them on a success fee based. I think you are good with this.
Yes, sir.
I want to take lead. In fact,
No, please, sir, please.
I was waiting, as I said.
So, sir,
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Sincere thanks to you, sir. Sincere thanks for your valuable time. Sincere thanks to you, sir. I think, sir, Atul ji, अगर आप भी अपना question, because just we are winding up, आपका question अगर Makhija sir and Ganti sir, both of them are there. So अगर if you would also like to raise, I think this is the last question which we can have.
Yeah, maybe we can unmute them, 1 or 2 people. Mr. Adarsh Sharma also wanted to be unmuted.
So
Yeah.
Prakhar ji, I would request Atul
Thanks,
ji.
Mr. Ji. I would just like to take up this opportunity. I need to ask the panel. I am a liquidator in one of the concerns where we have still continued the business. The business is such that we had to continue. And unfortunately, of course, because of whatever the conditions are going on, we are unable to find a buyer. In such a case, I believe that a liquidator is, should be paid, because whatever pains we have to take to run a going business, there is no provision as such for such kind of a situation.
So Ganti sir, you being a liquidator, आप please अच्छे से guide कर सकते हैं इसको.
Yeah, okay. The provision is there. Okay, it is not that it was always there. That
Okay.
the regulation 4 kicks in as a default only when the COC doesn't decide on the fee of the liquidator. So this is something which should have been addressed at the CIRP stage itself. When you are going into liquidation, what shall be the fee of liquidator
unfortunately,
for running? But suppose you have taken over later on, and now there is no option unfortunately, to go to SCC, for example, and ask for a fee. it doesn't exist. The law doesn't allow that. So you are stuck with what you have.
So is it fair to apply to NCLT?
You won't get any hearing.
Okay.
But
Because
I would-
they
I
will
would-
say you've gone in with open mind, with open eyes, you know what you are getting into. So you have accepted it, that's part of the game.
But I think what I can suggest and add on to what Mr. Ganti is saying is absolutely right on the legal footing. But I would still suggest that under these circumstances, because these are peculiar circumstances where you are making effort to run the company, like supposing it is a hotel business. So if you are running a hotel, obviously you're devoting your time, money, and effort which you are using. Your staff would also be there. So therefore, you must approach the adjudicating authority. I think the adjudicating authority can definitely consider it. Of course, it may or may not have those powers, but then it can use, you see, Rule 11, which is inherent power, can allow you something. I think, why don't we set a precedent? Because every time the court asks me, as a lawyer, when I appear, they say, Mr. Makhija, do you have precedent? My only answer to the judge is, my lords will set the precedent. So I want those judges to set the precedent. So go and set that precedent, my dear friend. I think it will be followed. Then the case name will be Atul Rajwadkar versus so and so, isn't it?
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Great, sir. Great. I think we had a very good discussion, and with all three visionary and panelists who were having a great wisdom, I think we had a very good session, and all the participants must have gathered a lot of knowledge. And with this, after participating in this program, this discussion paper, what we had today, so we can also just send our inputs, what is desired from our side as stakeholders. So friends, last date is 16th of September. So before that, we have to send our inputs. And I think today we had a very good deliberations, very good discussions. And apart from this discussion paper, we tried to solve certain other related queries also with all the wisdom of all our three panelists. So my sincere thanks and gratitude to all the three panelists. And again, thanks to Team Transition. Before I hand over to Team Transition for further proceedings. So my sincere thanks to Team Transition and specifically Rashmi ma'am for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much. Jai Hind, Jai ICAI.
Thank you.
Thank you, Niteshji. On behalf of Team Transition, a big thank you to all our expert panelists who have shared their knowledge with us regarding the topic. It was indeed an interactive and knowledgeable session. I'm sure our concepts have definitely been made more vivid. And a special thanks to Mr. Nitesh Gupta for effortlessly moderating the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you.
Finally, I would like to thank the participants for being so cooperative and patient throughout and for carrying on fruitful discussions. With this, I bid you all goodbye. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.
And we are waiting, Prakharji, for next program from Transition. We are eagerly waiting.
Sure, sir. We'll definitely keep you in loop. And as soon as the next program pops up, we'll let you know, sir.
Yeah, because it is always a great learning.
Yes, sir. We'll let you know, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.